The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. It stretched for miles in every direction, filled with floating platforms where representatives from 1,000 different worlds sat in judgment. Some breathed oxygen, others breathed methane or chlorine. Some had bodies of flesh, others were made of crystal or living metal. They had nothing in common except one thing: they all feared humanity. High Arbiter, Zixtal floated at the center of the chamber, their crystalline body catching the light from 100 different suns that shone through the transparent ceiling. They raised one limb, and the chamber fell silent. "We are here to vote on Resolution 7742, Zixtal announced. Their voice carried through every translator in the room. The resolution declares humanity a threat to galactic peace. If passed, all humans must return to their home system within 30 standard days. Any human found outside that system after the deadline will be destroyed." Ambassador Kira Holloway stood at the small podium reserved for humanity. She was a woman of 43 years, with tired eyes and gray hair beginning to show at her temples. She had spent 20 years trying to build bridges between humanity and the Council. Now, she watched those bridges burn. Behind her stood Captain Daniel Cruz of the diplomatic vessel Meridian. He was younger than her by 10 years, with dark hair and the kind of face that rarely showed emotion. Right now his jaw was tight with anger he was trying very hard to control. "Before we vote," Kira said, her voice steady, "I request the right to address the Council." Councillor Vrethenak rose from his platform. He was a massive insectoid creature, with 6 legs and compound eyes that glittered like black diamonds. He had been humanity's enemy since the first day they had met. "The human ambassador will remain silent," Vrethenak said. His mandibles clicked with each word. "We have heard enough human lies. We have seen enough human tricks. The evidence is clear. In 300 years, your species has broken 17 treaties. You have stolen technology. You have expanded into space that was not yours. You have shown again and again that you cannot be trusted." Kira did not look away from his gaze. "We have survived," she said simply. "That seems to be our real crime." The chamber erupted in noise. 1,000 different species shouting in 1,000 different languages. Zixtal had to pulse bright white light from their body 3 times before silence returned. "The ambassador will not speak again," Zixtal said. There was something that might have been regret in their voice. "The vote will now proceed." One by one, the species cast their votes. The Vrethenak hegemony voted yes. The Crystalline Collective voted yes. The methane breathers of Proxima voted yes. On and on it went, a parade of fear and hatred dressed up as justice. Kira watched it all with a face that showed nothing. Beside her, Daniel's hands had curled into fists at his sides. "How can they do this?" he whispered. "We've done nothing to them. We exist." Kira replied quietly. "That's enough." Voting took 3 hours. When it was finished, Zixtal announced the result. 847 species had voted to outlaw humanity. 12 had voted against. 141 had not voted at all. "The resolution passes," Zixtal said. "Humanity is now declared outlaw. You have 30 standard days to withdraw all your people to your home system. After that time, any human found in galactic space will be killed on sight." The High Arbiter paused. "Ambassador Holloway, do you wish to say anything before you leave?" Kira gathered her papers slowly. She took her time, organizing them neatly, as if she had all the time in the world. The council watched her with a mixture of triumph and unease. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes moved across the chamber, taking in every face, every sensor, every being that had just voted to destroy her people. "I have just one thing to say," she said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "You should have done this 200 years ago. Before we learned your languages. Before we mapped your communication networks. Before we understood how your economies work." She paused and smiled. It was not a warm smile. "You gave us 30 days. That is generous. We only needed 5. She turned and walked toward the exit. Daniel fell into step beside her, his face pale. "Ambassador," he said quietly as the doors closed behind them. "What did you mean back there?" Kira did not slow down. Her heels clicked against the metal floor of the corridor as she walked. I meant exactly what I said, Captain. Please contact Admiral Catherine Webb. Tell her it's time. Priority Alpha. Priority Alpha. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. That's the code for yes. Kira glanced at him, and her eyes were cold. The Council has made their decision. Now we make ours. They walked in silence through the winding corridors of the Council station. Other species moved out of their way, some with disgust on their faces, others with something that looked almost like pity. Kira ignored them all. When they reached the docking bay, where the Meridian waited, Daniel finally spoke again. Ambassador, I've heard rumors about Priority Alpha, about secret fleets and hidden colonies, about weapons that could. He stopped, unsure how to continue. Kira stopped walking and turned to face him. For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw the exhaustion underneath. The weight of secrets carried for too long. Captain Cruz, she said, for 300 years, humanity has been treated like children. We were told where we could go and where we could not go. We were given technology like treats given to a pet. We were patted on the head when we behaved and threatened when we did not. Her voice hardened. But we were never children. We were survivors. And survivors always have a backup plan. She turned and walked up the ramp into the Meridian. Daniel stood for a moment, looking back at the Council station. Through the viewing windows, he could see the lights of the great chamber where humanity's fate had just been decided. No, he realized. Not decided. The Council thought they had just sentenced humanity to death. They thought they had one. They had no idea what was coming. He turned and followed Kira into the ship. Behind him, the docking clamps released with a hiss. The Meridian began to pull away from the station in the Council chamber. Councillor Vrethenak was celebrating with his allies. They had finally dealt with the human problem. In 30 days, the threat would be contained. In a year, it would be forgotten. He did not notice that the human ambassador had left her podium perfectly clean. Not a single paper remained. Not a single trace that humanity had ever stood there at all. It was as if they had already erased themselves from the galaxy. But erasure, as the Council would soon learn, could work both ways. 3 years before the Council voted to outlaw humanity, 12 people sat in a room buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. The room had no windows. The walls were thick enough to stop any signal from getting in or out. It was the kind of place where secrets went to live. Admiral Catherine Webb stood at the head of the table. She was 60 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had spent her entire life preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now she knew it was coming anyway. Operation Contingency is now active, she said. Her voice was flat, like she was reading a weather report. Our spies on the Council station confirmed that Councillor Vrethenak has enough votes. Within 3 years, humanity will be declared outlaw. The people around the table shifted in their seats. Some of them were military officers in uniform. Others wore civilian clothes. They came from different backgrounds in different countries, but they all shared the same look in their eyes. The look of people who carried heavy burdens. A young man near the end of the table raised his hand. His name was Samuel Price, and at 30 years old, he was the youngest person in the room. He had been recruited straight out of the academy because someone had noticed how good he was at seeing patterns that others missed. Admiral Samuel said, "We've known this was coming for decades. Why are we acting now?" Webb almost smiled. "Almost, 'cause now we're ready, Commander. Dr. Patricia Reeves, please begin." A woman in her 50s stood up. Patricia had spent her entire career studying alien technology, taking apart the gifts the Council species had given humanity and figuring out how they really worked. What she had discovered had changed everything. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the center of the table. It showed a map of the galaxy, covered with glowing lines that connected star to star like a vast spider web. "This is the relay network," Patricia said. "Every species in the Council uses these relays to communicate and travel. A message that would take 1,000 years to arrive at light speed can be sent through the relays in seconds. A ship that would need centuries to reach another star can get there in hours." Everyone in the room knew this. It was basic knowledge. But Patricia was not finished. The council species believed the relays were built by an ancient race that died out millions of years ago. They think the technology is beyond understanding. They use it without knowing how it works, like a child using a computer without knowing what's inside. She paused. They are wrong. The room went very quiet. 15 years ago, my team cracked the relay encryption. We didn't just learn how to use the relays. We learned how to control them. Patricia's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. We can shut them down. All of them. With a single command, we can turn off ever. Why relay in the galaxy? Captain Maria Santos leaned forward. She was a small woman with burned scars on one side of her face, souvenirs from a battle that had officially never happened. What happens if you do that? Chaos, Patricia said simply. The council species have been using the relays for 50,000 years. They've forgotten how to do anything without them. If the relays go dark, their fleets can't travel. Their colonies can't communicate. Their governments can't function. She looked around the room. Their entire civilization freezes in place. Admiral Webb stepped forward. That's Phase 1. Commander Benjamin Torres, please explain Phase 2. A large man with gentle eyes and big hands stood up. Benjamin had spent 40 years building ships in secret, creating a fleet that did not exist on any official record. While the council has been watching our official navy, Benjamin said, we've been busy elsewhere. In the far reaches of uninhabited systems, we've built a shadow fleet. Not warships, exactly. Transport vessels. Colony ships. Factory platforms. He changed the hologram, and suddenly the map was covered with thousands of blue dots scattered across the galaxy. These are human settlements that the council doesn't know about. Samuel Price felt his stomach drop. How many people? The official human population is 4 billion, Benjamin said. The real number is closer to 32 billion. We've been moving people for generations, quietly, carefully, building new homes in places the council has never bothered to explore. The room was silent. Samuel looked at the map at all those blue dots and tried to understand what he was seeing. An entire civilization hidden in plain sight. Decades of planning. Generations of secrets. Why? He finally asked. Why go to all this trouble? Webb answered him. Because we knew this day would come, Commander. From the moment we first met the council species, we knew. They looked at us and saw something dangerous. Something that frightened them. Her voice was hard. Some of us wanted to believe we could change their minds. We tried diplomacy. We tried friendship. We followed their rules and hoped they would accept us. She walked to the hologram and stared at it. At all those hidden colonies, all those secret ships, all those people who had given up their old lives to build something new. But the smart ones knew better, she continued. They knew that you can't reason with fear. You can only prepare for what fear makes people do. She turned back to face the room. The council is going to try to destroy us. They've been planning it for centuries. The only difference is, we've been planning to, and we're better at it than they are. Kira Holloway sat in the corner of the room, silent. She was young then, barely 30, a junior diplomat attending her first strategy meeting. She had believed in peace. She had believed that if humans just tried hard enough, they could earn their place in the galaxy. Now she understood that place would never be given. It would have to be taken. What do you need from me? She asked. Webb looked at her with something like respect. When the time comes, you will stand before the council and accept their judgment. You will smile and nod and pretend to be defeated. And then you will walk out of that chamber and you will give me the signal. The signal for what? Webb's smile was cold. The signal that tells them their galaxy isn't theirs anymore. Kira thought about this for a long moment. She thought about all the times she had been insulted by council delegates, all the times she had been told that humans were too young, too primitive, too dangerous, all the times she had swallowed her pride and smiled anyway, hoping that kindness would be enough. It had never been enough. It would never be enough. I understand, she said. I'll be ready. She was. The countdown began the moment Kira Holloway walked out of the council chamber. On day 1, human colonies across the galaxy began their official evacuation. Ships lifted off from a dozen worlds, carrying families and cargo toward the Sol system. The council watched through their satellites and sensors, satisfied that their ultimatum was being obeyed. The humans were running scared, just as expected. On day 3, something strange happened in the Vrethenak hegemony. A relay station flickered offline for 17 minutes. Technicians rushed to fix it, but by the time they arrived, the station was working again. They blamed solar radiation and filed a report that no one read. On day 5, 3 more relay stations had brief outages. Different systems, different sectors, no apparent connection. The Council's technical division noted the incidents, but found no cause for alarm. The relay network had worked perfectly for 50,000 years. A few glitches meant nothing. On day 7, human freighter called the Constant Dawn was traveling through neutral space when a Vrethenak patrol cruiser appeared on its sensors. The cruiser's commander was a young officer named Vexrel who had been waiting his whole life for a chance to prove himself. Here was a human ship, alone and defenseless. The deadline had not passed yet, but who would care about one dead freighter? The Constant Dawn's captain was a woman named Grace Morrison. She was 52 years old and had been flying cargo ships since she was 16. She knew the moment she saw the cruiser that she was going to die. There was no way to outrun a military vessel, and there was no one close enough to help. She did not panic. She did not beg. Instead, she walked calmly to her communication console and sent a single coded message to a destination that officially did not exist. Then she turned to face the viewport, watching the cruiser grow larger as it approached. "For the ones who come after," she said quietly. The cruiser's weapons fired. The Constant Dawn became a ball of expanding fire and debris. Dexro recorded the kill in his log and turned his ship toward home. Feeling proud of himself, on day 8, Dexro's home station received a disturbing report. 3 supply convoys had vanished. No distress signals, no debris, no explanation. The ships had been traveling through secure space on routes they had used for centuries. One moment they existed, the next moment they did not. On day 10, the Council received reports from 17 different sectors. Human ships were appearing in places they had no business being. Not warships, just small vessels that slipped in and out of sensor range like ghosts. No one could catch them. No one could even get close. They were there, and then they were gone, leaving behind nothing but confusion and fear. On day 12, Admiral Catherine Webb held a meeting aboard the carrier Endurance. The ship was hidden inside the outer layer of an unnamed red star, invisible to any sensor the Council possessed. "The Council fleet is assembling," Webb told her officers. "They're gathering at Relay Station Prime near the center of the galaxy. Current count is 40,000 combat vessels." Captain Maria Santos studied the tactical display. The blue dots representing Council ships filled almost the entire screen. That's everything they have. They're not leaving anyone behind to defend their home systems. They don't think they need to, Webb said. In their minds, this is going to be easy. They'll sweep through our space, destroy whatever they find, and be home before their dinner gets cold. She smiled thinly. They're going to be disappointed. On day 15, half the deadline gone, Councillor Vrethenak addressed his fleet from the bridge of his flagship. His speech was broadcast to every ship in the Armada. "Today we end a threat that has hung over our galaxy for 300 years, he said, his mandibles clicking with excitement. "The humans thought they could deceive us. They thought they could hide among us, stealing our technology, expanding into our space. They were wrong. In 15 days, when the deadline expires, we will travel through the relay network and emerge in their home system, and then we will erase them from history." The fleet cheered. 40,000 ships, crewed by millions of beings from hundreds of species, all united in their hatred of humanity. It was the largest military force ever assembled. Nothing could stop them. On day 20, Ambassador Kira Holloway sent a final message to the Council. It was polite and formal, acknowledging the Exclusion Act and confirming humanity's compliance. She thanked the Council for giving humanity 30 days to evacuate. She wished them peace and prosperity. The message was a lie, of course, but it was a very good lie. The council believed every word. On day 12, the great fleet departed Relay Station Prime. Ship after ship after ship entered the relay network, accelerating to speeds that would have been impossible otherwise. Their destination was Sol, the star the humanity called home. The journey would take less than a day. On day 26, the fleet was inside the relay network, traveling through a dimension that normal space could not touch. Millions of soldiers prepared their weapons. Thousands of officers reviewed their battle plans. Vrethenac stood on his bridge, already composing the victory speech he would give after humanity was destroyed. On day 20, the fleet emerged from the relay network. They did not emerge at Sol. The 40,000 ships that had entered the network together came out scattered across 17 different star systems. Some ships appeared near gas giants. Others found themselves in empty space between stars. A few emerged inside asteroid fields and were destroyed before they could even understand what had happened. Their communication systems were dead. Their navigation computers showed nothing but static. They could not talk to each other. They could not find their way home. They were alone, isolated, lost in a galaxy that had suddenly become very dark and very cold. And then the human ships appeared. They came out of nowhere, emerging from hiding places that had been prepared decades ago. They were not warships. They did not need to be. They simply surrounded the scattered council vessels and broadcast a single message on all frequencies. This is Admiral Catherine Webb of the United Human Fleet. Your weapons are useless. Your communications are blocked. Your relay network has been shut down. You are now prisoners of humanity. A pause. Do not resist, and you will not be harmed. The war you started is already over. You lost the moment you voted to destroy us. In the council chamber, now nearly empty as delegates fled to their homeworlds through conventional space travel that would take years, High Arbiter Zixtal received the reports with growing horror. The relays were dark, all of them, every single one, and humanity was waiting. The galaxy held its breath. For 3 days after the fleet was scattered, no one knew what to do. The council chamber was almost empty. Most delegates had abandoned their posts, desperate to return to their homeworlds. But without the relay network, journeys that once took hours now took years. Many of them would grow old and die before they reached home. High Arbiter Zixtal remained at their post. They had nowhere else to go. Their homeworld was on the other side of the galaxy, and they were very, very old. On the 4th day, Ambassador Kira Holloway returned. She walked into the council chamber through the main entrance, flanked by Captain Daniel Cruz and a security team wearing armor that no council species recognized. The armor was black and sleek, designed not to frighten but to impress. To show that humanity had technologies the council had never seen, Councillor Vrethenac was there, having refused to abandon his post despite everything. His compound eyes tracked Kira as she crossed the chamber floor. There was hatred in those eyes, but also something else. Something that looked like fear. Ambassador Holloway, Zixtal said, their crystalline body flickering with stress. You have come to gloat over your victory? Kira stopped at the podium where she had stood 30 days ago. She looked older than she had then, tired, but there was steel in her voice when she spoke. I have come to negotiate, she said. Vrethenac made a sound that might have been a laugh. Negotiate. You have committed an act of war against the entire galaxy. You have destroyed our fleet. You have shut down our communications. We have defended ourselves, Kira interrupted. You voted to destroy our species. Every man, woman, and child. You called it justice. You called it necessary. Her voice hardened. We call it what it was. Attempted genocide. The chamber was silent. The relay network will remain offline until we reach an agreement, Kira continued. Your fleet is scattered but unharmed. We could have destroyed every single ship. We chose not to. Your homeworlds are isolated but intact. We could have attacked them while your defenses were down. We chose not to. She leaned forward. We are not monsters, Counselor. We are survivors. And survivors know that victory means nothing if you become the thing you were fighting against. Zixthal's form pulsed slowly. What do you want? Recognition, equality, a permanent seat on the council with full voting rights. The Exclusion Act must be erased from all records. Kira paused. And we want access to the historical archives. Complete access. Including the sealed sections? There was a long silence. Zixthal and Vrethanok exchanged looks. Even in their moment of defeat, the request seemed to disturb them. The archives are sacred, Zixthal said finally. They contain records of civilizations that rose and fell before any of us existed. They are not meant for young species. Kira asked, for newcomers? For children who haven't earned the right to know the truth? She shook her head. We've spent 300 years being told we were too young to understand, too primitive to be trusted. We were given scraps of technology like treats given to pets. We were patted on the head when we behaved and threatened when we did not. Her voice dropped. That ends now. Either we are equals, or there is nothing to discuss. The negotiations lasted 6 months. It was not easy. There were shouting matches and walkouts and moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But slowly, painfully, an agreement took shape. Humanity would get their seat on the council. The Exclusion Act would be erased. The relay network would come back online, jointly controlled by a new governing body that included human representatives, and the archives would be opened. Dr. Patricia Reeves led the research team. She was 70 now, walking with a cane, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She had spent her whole life studying alien technology. Now she would study alien history. What she found changed everything. The relay network is not 50,000 years old, Patricia reported to a joint Human Council committee. 2 years after the negotiations ended, it is closer to 2 million years old. And it was not built by some ancient precursor race that died out long ago. The chamber was packed. Representatives from both sides leaned forward, waiting. The relay network was built by the council species themselves, Patricia said. Or rather, by earlier versions of them. This is not the first galactic civilization. It is the 7th. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Every 50 to 100,000 years, the cycle repeats, Patricia continued. Species rise. They spread across the galaxy. They grow powerful. And then something happens. A collapse. A catastrophe. The records are not clear on exactly what, but each time a few species survive, they rebuild. They create the relay network again using templates left over from previous cycles. And then they forget. Rethanak's mandibles clicked nervously. You were saying we have forgotten our own history? Many times over, each cycle, the survivors lose more knowledge. The technology becomes ritual. You use the relays without understanding them. You follow traditions without knowing why. Patricia looked around the room, and there is a pattern. In every cycle, new species emerge. Young species, aggressive, adaptable. The older species fear them. They try to contain them, restrict them, destroy them. They outlaw them, Kira said quietly from her seat. Yes, and each time that fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The restricted species fight back. Wars consume the galaxy. The relay network fails. Civilization collapses. Tricia paused, and the cycle begins again. Admiral Webb, attending the meeting through a holographic display, spoke for the first time. The question is not whether humanity should be part of the galactic community. The question is whether this cycle will be different from the 6 that came before. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Zixthal rose from their seat. Their crystalline body caught the light, scattering rainbows across the walls. For 50,000 years, they said slowly, we have told ourselves that we were wise, that we had learned from the mistakes of those who came before, that we were guardians of order and peace. Their voice dropped. We were fools. We almost made the same mistake again. We almost destroyed a species simply because they frightened us. They turned to face Kira. Ambassador Holloway, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize. Not just for the Exclusion Act, for 300 years of condescension and fear. You were right. You were always right. You were never children. You were survivors, just like us. They paused. Perhaps better than us. Kira stood and walked to where the High Arbiter waited. For a long moment, the two of them simply looked at each other. Human and Crystal. Two species that had nearly gone to war. Then Kira extended her hand. No more cycles, she said. No more collapses. We break the pattern here. Together. Zixil reached out with one crystalline limb and touched her palm. It was an awkward gesture. It was two beings from different worlds trying to find common ground. But it was a start. 10 years had passed since the Council voted to destroy humanity. The galaxy looked very different now. The relay network was back online, humming with activity. Ships from 100 different worlds passed through its gates every hour. But now the network was managed by a joint committee that included humans, and its secrets were no longer secrets at all. Young engineers from every species studied how the relays worked. For the first time in thousands of years, people understood the technology they depended on. The scattered Council fleet had been rescued. Ship by ship, in a process that took 3 years. It required cooperation between species that had never trusted each other. Humans worked alongside Vrethenak soldiers. Crystalline beings helped repair methane breather vessels. Old enemies found themselves sharing meals and telling stories, and something strange happened along the way. They began to see each other as people instead of threats. Ambassador Kira Holloway stood on the observation deck of Relay Station Prime, watching ships pass through the Great Gateway. She was 55 now, with more gray in her hair and deeper lines around her eyes. But she stood straight, and her gaze was steady. Beside her stood High Arbiter Zixthal. Their crystalline form caught the light of distant stars, breaking it into soft rainbows that danced across the deck. I never thanked you, Zixthal said quietly. Kira raised an eyebrow. Thanked me for what? Crashing your civilization? For waking us up. Zixthal turned to face her. We had grown old and comfortable. We believed that, because we had survived the previous cycles, we were better than everyone else. We forgot that survival without growth is just slow death. Kira was quiet for a moment, watching a human trading vessel dock next to a Vrethenak cargo ship. 10 years ago, such a sight would have been impossible. Now, it was ordinary. We were frightened too, she said finally. When we first met the Council species, we saw a galaxy full of ancient civilizations that could crush us without effort. We spent 3 centuries preparing for a war we hoped would never come. Yet when the war came, you chose mercy. Zixel's form pulsed gently. Your fleet could have destroyed our scattered ships. Your agents could have caused chaos on our homeworlds. Instead, you waited until we were ready to listen. Kira smiled, but there was something sad in it. Mercy had nothing to do with it. If we had destroyed you, we would have become exactly what you feared. We would have started the next cycle of violence. Eventually, some other young species would rise, and they would have every reason to do to us what we did to you. She shook her head. The only way to break the cycle is to refuse to continue it. Below them, the airlocks were opening. Beings from 2 different species walked toward each other in the corridor between ships. Kira watched them meet, watched them exchange greetings in a language that both could understand. My grandson is on that ship, she said. His name is Christopher. He's 19 years old, and he's going to be the first human to study at the Vrethenak Academy of Sciences. Zixel's form brightened with interest. He must be very talented. He is. He's curious about everything. He wants to understand how the galaxy works, not just how to use it. Kira paused. He doesn't really understand why his grandmother seems sad sometimes. He was born after the war. To him, this is just how things are. Humans and council species working together, sharing knowledge. Building something new? Is that not a good thing? It's a wonderful thing. It's what we fought for. Kira turned to face the High Arbiter. But Christopher will never know how close we came to losing everything. He'll never know about the secret fleets and hidden colonies. He'll never know that his grandmother once stood in this very station and walked out, knowing that she might never see her home again. Zixthil was silent for a long moment. Perhaps that is as it should be. Each generation inherits the world their parents built. They do not need to carry the weight of past fears. No, Kira agreed. They need to build something better. A message chimed on her personal communicator. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. The sadness faded, replaced by something that looked like excitement. The survey teams found something, she said. Another cache of archived data, deep in the outer rim. Records from the third cycle, maybe earlier. The oldest data we've ever recovered. What does it contain? Kira looked up at the stars visible through the transparent ceiling. Millions of points of light, each one a sun with its own worlds, its own mysteries, its own stories waiting to be discovered. The beginning, she said. Or maybe just another middle. Either way, we're going to find out together. She turned and began walking toward the docking bay where her ship waited. After a moment, Zixthal followed. Their crystalline body caught the starlight, scattering it in patterns that had never existed before. Patterns that were entirely new. Behind them, Christopher Holloway stood at the viewport of his own ship, watching his grandmother go. He was young and eager, full of questions about the universe. He did not know about the war. He did not know about the cycles. He only knew that somewhere out there in the vast darkness between stars, there were answers waiting to be found, and he was going to find them. The seventh cycle was ending. The archives were being studied. The mistakes were being understood. For the first time in 2 million years, the galaxy had a chance to grow instead of just survive. It would not be easy. Old fears did not die quickly. Old hatreds did not fade overnight. There would be setbacks and conflicts and moments when everything seemed ready to fall apart. But there would also be moments like this one. A human grandmother and a crystalline elder, walking side by side through a space station that had once been a symbol of division and was now a symbol of hope. A young man looking up at the stars, dreaming of discoveries not yet made. The Council had outlawed humanity. They had tried to erase an entire species from the galaxy, but the moment had already passed. Humanity had been preparing for generations. They had been building and planning and waiting for the day when fear would force the galaxy to choose. Now the choice was made, not by humanity alone, but by everyone together. A choice to break the pattern. A choice to end the cycles. A choice to become something new, and somewhere in the endless dark between stars. The future was waiting. It was going to be different this time. It had to be. The galaxy had spent 2 million years making the same mistakes. Now, at last, it was ready to learn, and humanity was ready to teach.